Hi everyone, it's Penny Black and Jill Foster here with video number 4 in our Permission to Play video series. And today we are going to be creating with our 4th card sketch, which is our Octagon Filler sketch. And again, a really versatile card sketch that is also very simple to do. And so it just gives you permission to play. So as an explanation and a reminder of what this series is all about, is to give yourself permission to make simple cards, to do the same sketch or layout over and over. If you love it, keep going with it. It is okay to mix old and new products. It's okay to be creative and not productive. So to not finish a card is okay. You can work in steps or batches, and to not compare your cards to other people's cards. Your recipients don't do that, and for me, it just steals my joy. And then here are 3 hacks for making simple cards you're proud of. Use embossing folders, use quality images, and use strong colors. And I find when I do that, I'm happy with even very simple cards. So here is a look at the sketch, and then we will get to creating. So this sketch has an octagon, which you can move any place on the sketch, up, down, you can turn to the side. You can place your dies or your stamps in it, or outside of it, or both. And I'll show you examples with all of these. Now, I like to prep ahead, and I have a video showing how I prepped for all 10 of these card sketches. So if you haven't seen that yet, I'll link it down below so you don't miss that. But in my envelope system, I have these embossed panels. I've die cut our all-in-one octagon die, and I'm using just the center portion of that. And from scratch paper, I've cut just little panels that will fit behind that octagon. Now I'm ready to do my stamping in sort of a batch format. So I've grabbed my Canson 140-pound watercolor paper. I've just grabbed some scraps, and I'm using the MISTI stamp positioning tool to stamp that using Reinkers Archival ink in the color of watering can. And I like that ink because it's not stark black, but it still makes your images very easy to see and to color. So in batch style, I've stamped several images. I'm only using the little bottom part of that hedgy stamp. And then I also have some die cuts from that same watercolor paper. Now, just a reminder that all 10 of these sketches in our Permission to Play series and the card ideas are available in a downloadable ebook, and I will link that for you down in the YouTube description box below if you'd like to purchase that and show your support of this video series. Now I'm using our Distress Ink Reinkers used as watercolors. That's just a medium that I love. I've got a cup of water and a paper towel there for my painting. Now I do have a video where I show my painting process in much more detail, slowed down, and talk through just the painting a lot more, and I'll link that for you below. But typically what I like to do is pick up that Reinker ink from my palette, just straight Reinker ink, so that's going to be dark and concentrated, and put that where I want the darkest color to be on the image. Now because these are such beautifully illustrated stamps or beautifully designed dies, you don't need to do a lot of shading. In fact, if you just painted this all one color, it would be fine. It would still look beautiful. And that is one of those, part of that hack of using strong images, quality images, which I love Penny Black for. These are images you can go back to anytime, 10 years later, and they still look good. You still love them. This is one of the new stamps called Purr. It's a miniature 3x4-inch stamp set. You can see I put down that blue color, and I'm just adding in a little bit of Evergreen Bough on the other side and mixing them together, letting them just mix and blend right there on her dress. And that just gives some variation in color. Now all of the exact supplies I'm using, the colors, exact colors, ink colors, paintbrush, everything is listed for you down in that YouTube description box below. So if you have a question, you can definitely check that out, or if you want more details. Now you can see while this is still wet, I am just dropping in a little bit more color where I want it to be darker, and it's still wet, so that color starts to move and blend out into like the center of her dress. I can also lift color as I'm doing there with what's called a thirsty brush. So I've patted it dry on my paper towel, and then I press it into where I want it to be lighter, and it will actually lift some of that color. Now before I move on, I just dried that with my heat gun because I'm going to be painting right up next to where that was wet, so I wanted to be sure it was dry. Now I've pressed a Memento Toffee Crunch ink pad onto an acrylic block, and I'm just picking that up with some water to paint in the skin tone. And I just like that, using that, because I find it doesn't have any yellow sort of undertones to it, so I just grab that, but you can use whatever you prefer. And with all of these, again, it's permission to play. So if you would rather color with Copic markers, or you would rather color with colored pencils, however you prefer to color your images, it's okay to do that every single time. It is, and if you like to mix it up, you can mix it up too. But I think sometimes we feel this pressure to be trying all the newest and latest things, and it is totally okay to just find the thing that you love and do it over and over again. And that's what I'm doing. I like to mix up my different stamped images, but I'm keeping with the same medium. Now, if I get bored with that, maybe I would do the same, not mix up the stamps as much, but mix up the medium that I'm using to color with. I hope that makes sense. But I think we just have to give ourselves permission to do, it's a hobby, to do what's being fun and not feel any kind of outside pressure to be trying things that maybe we're not interested in. So I'm just continuing here to paint her hair. And again, just a pretty flat wash of color. And you can see this starts to come to life even without lots of shading added in. And I love that about these images. I'm going to move on here to the cat. Just adding a little bit of color around the outside edge. And then I rinsed off my paintbrush, dabbed it on that paper towel, and then going back and just blending that along that edge so it sort of fades into the white. I'll do the same thing here, putting that concentrated ink color down first, patting off my paintbrush, and blending it off with that pretty dry, clean paintbrush. Not totally dry, but pretty dry. I'm just kind of following that same process. If I want a lighter color, I'm going to leave a little bit more water on my paintbrush. You can always go back and darken things up, which I'm doing here. It's still a little bit wet, just the cat, and so I can go in, put a little darker ink, pat off my paintbrush, rinse it off, pat it off dry on the paper towel, and then blend the edges of that out. Then I'll just add a little bit of pink to the cheeks. I love using the color Spun Sugar to do that. And a little bit to the nose there. I just love that cat's face and that hug that they have. So, so cute. Now I'm going to go in and paint the bow on the dress. And this sketch is really great for any size image that you have. Pretty much cute, elegant. You can make it work with this sketch because you can either put it inside the octagon or around the octagon or part of it inside of it, or use the octagon almost as a background or a place to hold your sentiment. So you'll see all that coming up here. Now I did decide to go back and just darken up her hair a little bit. So this was dry, and I'm just dropping in a little bit of gathered twigs distress ink, rinsed off my paintbrush, patted it on the paper towel, and then just going back and blending that a little bit. I felt like that just gave it more of a natural color. Once I got done, I looked at it and I felt like it just looked a little too yellow for me. So I'm just going back and trying to make it look a little bit more natural. Even put in a little tiny bit of Rusty Hinge distress ink on there. Now I'm going to paint those die cuts. So I love with all of these sketches that I'm sharing, you can do it with die cuts or stamps, cute or more elegant. And so if you are new to watercolor and you've been wanting to give it a try, I highly recommend painting some beautiful floral die cuts because it's very, very forgiving, and it gives you a chance to sort of experiment with the intensity of the color, how much water you want to use, lifting color, because it's so forgiving and you haven't done it on your actual card itself. So if you goof up, you can just die cut another one and start again. I put down a blue and then some evergreen bough and then some forest moss right up the center while it's still wet. And look at it start to sort of bleed out from the center, and then I can just lightly swipe where it meets that more blue or turquoise color, and I just love how that looks. I can even go back and put a little bit more blue on there if I want, mixing it all together while it's still wet. If you stay within colors that are close together on the color wheel, like blues and greens, reds and oranges, it is okay to let them kind of mix and blend right there on your project, on your die cut. This is so the first die I painted there is our Ascending creative die, and this is the Flower Family creative die. And I want these to be sort of white, so I just put in some spiced marmalade right in the center, lightly blended it out, and then actually lifted some of that color before it started spreading too far out onto the flower. Super easy way to get some really pretty flowers. And then I'll just paint that stem to match the others that I just did, a little bit of blue and some green on there. So I went ahead and I fussy cut my stamped images. If you had matching dies, you could do that too for your card design. These are pretty easy to cut out, and I never worry about like whiskers or anything hard. I just cut them off. So give yourself permission to do that too. Now I decided I wanted to change this up from the white flower, so I just grabbed my Distress ink and an ink blending tool and a foam pad, and I'm just inking right on top. So again, like I said, if you're not into painting, you could do all these sketches with die cuts and distress inks or inks and ink blending tools to do your coloring. I added a little picked raspberry and now some seedless preserves just on the tip. And I'm also doing this to kind of match to her dress, because I decided to also use this with that girl and the cat stamp. Now this is just a piece of scratch paper. I'm going to ink it with Toffee Crunch ink in the color Memento ink, starting off the edge and working my way on in a circular motion. And that is going to go behind that octagon. Now I stamped that with my sentiment, and then I'm going to adhere my octagon right on top and just trim off the excess. And I have popped up the octagon using foam tape just for a little extra dimension. So you can use that. You could stick your actual stamps inside there like they're peeking out through a window, or you can use it just sort of as a frame for your sentiment and put your stamps on the outside, which is what I'm going to do here. So here's a look at the finished cards. I have those flowers coming out from inside the octagon and the girl down in front of it. So just a variation on that sketch. Again, an embossed background finishes it off. You don't need any more. Here I actually put my cat in there and used some other dies just to finish it off, and a little chat bubble die for the sentiment. Here's a mix of putting the stamped image inside the octagon and some other elements outside or extending beyond that frame. And again, another example of that, going from cute to more elegant. So I will have still shots of each of these cards here up at the end of the video. I thank you so much for watching. I'd love to know, do you have a favorite card, or if you've been watching this whole series, do you have a favorite sketch so far that you're excited to give a try? Leave a comment down in the YouTube description box below. I would love to know what you're thinking. I love your comments, and thank you for all of your encouragement. Also be sure that if you're watching that you're also subscribed to our channel, and you may want to hit that bell icon so that you're notified when video number 5 in our Permission to Play video series goes up. And you can also continue to connect with Penny Black on Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, as well as our Instagram, website, and blog, and all of those are linked for you down below. Thanks for watching, and happy stamping!